Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, good night everyone. Your Excellency Miss Hansa as a lecturer of Sociolinguistics and honorable all of the audience. I'm Mutia Salsabila. Today I will be presenting an article titled Trilingual Chronicles Navigating the Multi-Faced Landscape of Code Mixing on Twitter Comments with hashtag Jawakarta by Rachelina, Nisa, Oktaviandini and colleagues, published in 2025. Before discussing the article, let me explain what code mixing is. Code mixing is when someone uses words, phrases, or sentences from two or more languages in one conversation or text. For example, when an Indonesian says,
"Well, happy banget hari ini."
they are mixing English into Indonesian. In Indonesia, code mixing is very common because many people speak both local language and Indonesian. Now that we understand what code mixing is, let's look at the main issue discussed in the article. The first is what types of code mixing appear on Twitter with hashtag Jawakarta, and why do users mix languages? The study focuses on a common phenomenon in Indonesia, which is bilingualism. Many Indonesians are fluent in both local language like Japanese and the national language Indonesian. This creates natural opportunities for code mixing. Twitter provides a fascinating context because it's tech-based, public, and encourages informal communication. The Jawakarta hashtag is particularly interesting because it represents a community where Japanese and Indonesian speakers interact. The researchers used two main theories. The first is Maisken's Typology 2022, which identifies three types of code mixing. The first is insertion, inserting words or phrases from one language into another. And the second is alternation, switching between language structure. And the third, congruent lexicalization, using grammatical structure shared by both language. And the second is Hoffman's theory, 1991, which identifies factors for code mixing, including expressing group identity, showing empathy, using interjection, and discussing particular topics. For the methodology, the researchers used a qualitative descriptive approach. They analyzed 20 Twitter comments that use the hashtag Jawakarta. Data collection involved document analysis. Essentially, they observe and categorize existing tweets. This is a common approach in digital sociolinguistics because it captures natural language and use without influencing participants. After collecting the data, they categorize each comment based on what type of code mixing was used: insertion, alternation, of congruent lexicalization. And the second is what factor was driving the code mixing, based on Hoffman's theory. Now, let me explain the findings. The researchers found two main results. The first finding is that insertion was the most dominant type of code mixing out of 20 comments. 14 used insertion, or 70%, and 4 used congruent lexicalization, or 20%, and only 2 comments used alternation, or 10%. This means users prefer to insert words or phrases from one language into another rather than switching whole grammatical structure. For example, a comment like,
"Wah, gue belum madang nih dari tadi siang."
Insert the Japanese word madang into Indonesian sentence. Why this is important is suggests that users find it easier or more natural to insert words from another language rather than change the entire sentence structure. This is consistent with what we often see in everyday in Indonesian conversation. The second finding is that expressing group identity was the primary factor driving code mixing. This appeared in 16 out of 20 comments. It means 80%. Other factors found were expressing sympathy or solidarity, 2 cases, interjection, 1 cases, and talking about particular topics, 1 case. This is significant finding. It suggests that for #Jawakarta users, code mixing is less about particle linguistic need and more about signaling belonging to a specific community. It's a social marker, a way of saying, I'm part of the group. Overall, the researchers found that what many people see as just mixing language is actually a social practice that helps users express their identity and belong to a community. Now, let me share my thoughts on this article. What are the strengths? First, the article has clear theoretical grounding, using established frameworks from Maisken and Hoffman, gives it credibility and makes the finding easier to understand and compare with other studies. And the second, the focus on Twitter is timely and relevant. Social media is increasingly important for sociolinguistic research, and this study contributes to our understanding of digital language use in Indonesia. And the third, the #Jawakarta context is culturally specific and meaningful. It represents real Indonesian bilingual communities, not just hypothetical examples. And the fourth, the study supports existing theory by showing that Maisken's and Hoffman's frameworks work in digital contexts. However, there are some limitations. First, the sample size is very small, only 20 comments. Can we really generalize patterns from such a limited datasets? Probably not. We need a larger studies to confirm these findings. And the second, the study focuses on only one platform, Twitter. Language trends also spread through Instagram and TikTok. Therefore, the findings may not represent social media language as a whole. The third, there is limited context. We don't know user demographics, follower counts, or the full conversation threads. This makes it harder to understand why using are mixing languages. And the fourth, the study is purely qualitative without statistical testing. And the last, there is potential selection bias. Comments using #Jawakarta might not represent typical Twitter user or typical code mixing behavior. So, for future research, I think study could be expanded in several ways. First, researchers could analyze larger datasets, perhaps hundreds or thousands of tweets. And second, comparative research could examine different hashtags like Jakarta, Jogja, or Surabaya. Third, cross-platform analysis could compare code mixing on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And fourth, longitudinal studies could track how code mixing patterns evolve over time. And the last, combining textual analysis with user interviews could provide richer insight into motivation. These studies could help us better understand how language change and human spirit in the digital era. So, in conclusion, this study revealed that code mixing on Twitter with hashtag Jawakarta is dominated by insertion, and the primary motivation is expressing group identity. The researchers found that users prefer to insert words from one language into another rather than switching grammatical structures. More importantly, they mix languages not because they have to, but because they want to show they belong to the Jawakarta hashtag community. While the study has limitation, particularly the small sample size and focus on just one platform, it opens up important conversation about language, identity, and social media in Indonesia. For me, language users, this research remind me that code mixing is not just about communication. It's about who we are and who we belong with. The next time you mixing language on social media, ask yourself, and why am I doing this? So that's all from me. Thank you for listening. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.